Okay. Zavim. Okay. Hey Gimel. Because they said anything that carries or is carried upon a contaminated couch is tahor except for a person. Anyone who carries or is carried upon an animal carcass is tahor except for one who moves it. Rabbi Elias says, providing that he carries it. Anything that carries or is carried upon a human corpse is tahor except if it forms a roof over the corpse and except for a person who moves the corpse. If part of the Tame person was resting on the Tahoe person, or part of the Tahoe person was resting on the Tame person, or if the connected outgrowths of the Tame person were resting on the Tahoe person, or if the connected outgrowths of the Tahoe person were resting on the Tame person, in all of these cases, the Tahoe person is rendered Tame. Okay. If Shimon says if part of the Tame person was on the the Tahoe person becomes Tame, but if part of the Tahoe person was on the Tame person, he remains Tahoe. If a tummy person was resting on part of a tahor couch, or if a tahor person was resting on a part of a contaminated couch, the tahor couch, a person is rendered tummy. However, if only part of a tummy person is resting on a tahor couch, or if only part of a tahor person is resting on a contaminated couch, the tahor person or person remains tahor. Thus, we find the tumor enters a couch and exudes from it through a small part of it. Furthermore, a loaf of truma bread that is placed on a contaminated couch with a piece of paper between the loaf and the couch, whether it's resting on top of the couch or situated underneath the couch, remains tahor. Similarly, in a situation involving an afflicted stone, the loaf would remain tahor, but Rabbi Shimon rules the loaf tamei in this case. Tamei in this case. Okay. Good.
Right. Mishnah Vav. הנוגע בזב ובזב ובנידה וביולדת ובמצורע, במשכב ובמושב. So all of these things that are av hatuma, while he is in contact with them, metame shnayim uposel echad, he functions himself as an av hatuma. It's like it electrically conducts through him, and he acts as an av hatuma as well. If he touches something else, he could touch a kli, and that kli becomes a rishon. And then the kli can then touch a sheni, which then becomes let's say chulin food. It touches chulin food. The chulin food becomes a sheni, so that's matame shnayim. And if that chulin food touches truma, then it will pass all the truma. Okay. Perash, as soon as he separates, however, matame echad uposel echad, he becomes a rishon. So that's just a code word over there. Whenever you see matame shnayim uposel echad, that's an avatuma. Whenever you see matame echad uposel echad, if he contaminates one and invalidates one, that's talking about a rishon. Okay. Af echad hanogea ve'echad hamesit, echad hanosei ve'echad hanisa. It doesn't matter whether he's touching, if he is moving, if he is carrying, or if he is being carried by any of these categories at the beginning of the Mishnah. They all have the same effect. That while the contact or the carrying or the moving is in effect, then he is functioning as an avatuma, and thereafter, as soon as it stops, he becomes a rishon. Okay. Mishnah Zayin, hanogea bezova shel zav. Now, what about if he touches the actual emission of the zav, uvaruko, or his spittle, over shich basaro, or his if his semen, b'meimei raglav u'b'dam hanida, or his urine, or the blood of anida. All of these things themselves are an avatuma, and while he is touching them, metame shnayim posel echad, which means he's an avatuma while he's in contact. Peirash, as soon as he separates, metame echad u'posel echad, he immediately becomes a rishon. Echad hanogea ve'echad hamesit, and it makes no difference whether he is touching it or he is just moving it. Rabbi Eliezer Omer af hanosei, even one who carries it. And just as we modified it yesterday, remember in yesterday's Mishnah we said that Rabbi Eliezer is saying even one who carries, which sounds like a chumrah, and the Gemara modifies that statement of Rabbi Eliezer again to say vahu shemei hanosei, but that as a restriction, that a mesit, one who moves one of these forms of tumah, is only becomes tame if he is also carrying it. But if he's not carrying it and he pokes it with a stick or something, that does not transmit tumah according to Rabbi Eliezer. Halacha does not follow Rabbi Eliezer. Okay. Mishna Ches, Hanoseis and Merkav. Okay, Merkav. We learned a little bit about Merkav in Maseches Kalim, but the difference between a Merkav and a Mishkav is that a Merkav you ride on with your legs apart. So you got one leg on either side of the object. So a saddle is your classic Merkav, but also, the various types of Kalim where the bench is designed for you to put your legs on either side and uh, there's one area. The only difference between a merkav and a mishkav is in what we're going to read in this Mishnah today. Okay. Hanoses a merkav. If somebody carries a merkav, v'anisa alav, or he is carried upon it, v'meisito, or he moves it, just like a mishkav, while he's in contact, he is an avatuma, perish, echad or posel echad. As soon as he separates, he acts as a secondary. However, do we see this? Sorry, actually, no, it's not explicit in this Mishnah. The difference with the merkav is that what's missing over here is a nogabo. Just touching a merkav, it does not render you an avatuma. Okay, that's the only kula by a merkav is that touching does not infect in the way that carrying or moving it does. Okay, and it acts as just like any other form of tumah, like a sheretz. So if you touch a sheretz, you become a rishon. If you touch a merkav, you become a rishon. But it's only that's just a Gezeres Akasa. There's no logic to this. It's just that that's how Hashem made the world. And America has that one little kula that touching is not as bad as carrying. Okay. If one is carrying a nevela, now a nevela also is one of those things that contaminates by carrying. And also carrying chatas water, that is paraduma water. If there's enough in it for sprinkling and you carry it, it also contaminates, and you're carrying it not for the purpose of sprinkling. You're just moving it from point A to point B, right? Then anyone who carries it will become tameh. Okay, but tameh shnaim posel echad, while he is in contact, he is an avatuma. Perish tameh echad posel echad, and as soon as he lets go, he is a rishon. Okay, so today we just really saw a lot of examples of cases where while you are in contact with the source of tumah, you yourself become like a source of tumah. It electrically goes through you, and as soon as you release it, you become a rishon. And that's it for today. Let's go back into Chazar.
Aleph base. Regarding someone who has a seminal emission on the third day of his Zav count, the Beit Shammai says he forfeits the 2 preceding days, but Beit Hillel says he has forfeited only that day. Rabbi Yishmael says one who has a seminal emission on the second day of his Zav count forfeits the preceding day. Rabbi Akiva says both someone who has a seminal emission on the second day and someone who has a seminal emission on the third day, Beit Shammai say that he has forfeited the 2 preceding days, and Beis Hillel says that he has forfeited only that day. And they agree in a case where there is seminal emission on the 4th day that he forfeited only that day, but only when he has an emission of semen. But if he had a Zav emission, even on the 7th day, he has forfeited all the preceding days. If one had a Zav emission today and 2 on the following day, or 2 today and 1 on the following day, or 3 of Zav emissions on 3 consecutive days, or on 3 consecutive nights, he is a full Zav. If a person had 1 Zav emission and then stopped for the length of time it takes to immerse and dry himself off, and then he had 2 emissions on a single emission that is as lengthy as 2 emissions, he has 2, or he has 2 Zav emissions or a single emission as lengthy as 2, and stopped for the time it takes to immerse and dry himself off, then he had 1 emission, he is a full Zav. Okay.
Nida, Ches.
Okay. Every growth that is subject to a bear, bear is subject to sevias. But there can be a growth that is subject to sevias, but is not subject to bear. Every fish that has scales has fins, but there can be a fish that has fins but does not have scales. And every animal that has horns has split hooves, but there can be an animal that has split hooves but does not have horns. And everything that requires a blessing after a blessing before it, but there can be something that requires a blessing before it and does not require a blessing after it, stated in the Torah. Is let's skip
You
some.
know, you jumped something didn't make sense there. You
Uh,
finished the Mishnah and then you said something that was
uh,
not related.
Something that requires a blessing before it and does not require a blessing after it. A
Finished.
girl.
That's it. That's it. We're done with that. That was three.
All right. Regarding someone who is consecrating Mekatos and the consecration ashes fell on his hands or on the side of the trough, and afterwards fell into the trough, the consecrated is invalid. And if they fell from the tube into the trough, the consecration is invalid. If we took ashes from the tube and then covered the tube or closed the door, the consecration ashes are valid, but the water is invalid. If he stood the tube on the ground, the ashes are invalid, and if he held the tube in his hand, the ashes are valid because it is possible to guard them. If the consecration ashes were floating on top of the water, it may Reb Shimon say he may take ashes and consecrate mekatos with them. But they can come and say any ashes that touch the water, one may not consecrate mekatos with them. If he sprinkled the consecrated water, and found consecrated ashes at the bottom, then may and Reb Shimon say he may dry them and consecrate mekatos with them. But they can come and say any ashes that have touched the water, one may not consecrate mekatos with them. Okay. Let me see.
And Gimel.
Sorry, wait.
We finished in one more in para. Gimel.
Did I skip something? Skipped. Okay, I'll say. Here we go. Regarding one who is consecrated, make hatos on a trough, and there is a trafe bottle in the trough. Even though the mouth of the trafe bottle is extremely narrow, the water within it is consecrated.
Carry on. There's more to this Mishnah.
If there was a sponge in the trough, the water within the sponge is invalid. But what should he do? He should pour out the water in the trough until he reaches the sponge. When we touch the sponge, he may even though water is floating above it in any amount, the water is invalid.
Okay.
And we're going to finish this tomorrow and then go on to
A para. No, para has got a second volume. There's a lot of stuff in para.
so we're going to go to Para then.
Yeah, carry on with second volume of para.
Tamura.
Hmm.
All animals that are forbidden to be offered on the altar render forbidden other animals in any amount. And any animal that sodomized an animal that was sodomized, if the said designated animal, one that was worshipped, a harlot's wage, a dog's exchange, a hybrid, a treifa, and one delivered through cesarean section. What is a designated animal? One that was designated for idolatrous purposes. It itself is prohibited, but what is upon it is permitted. What is one that was worshipped? Any animal that was worshipped as an idol. It has it and what it is upon it is forbidden. Both this and this are that are permitted to be eaten. What is a harlot's wage? If one says to a harlot, take this lamb as for your wage, even if he gives her 100 lambs, they're all forbidden. Similarly, if one says to his fellow, take the lamb and let your maidservant spend the night with my slave, Rebbe says it is not a harlot's wage, but the sages say it is a harlot's wage. What is a dog's exchange? If one says to his fellow, take this lamb in exchange for this dog. Similarly, if two partners divided their animals between them, and one took 10 lambs and one took 9 lambs and a dog, the lambs that are taken against the dog are prohibited, while those that are taken with the dogs are permitted. And a dog's wage and a harlot's exchange, these are permitted as it is stated 2, but not 4. The offspring of an Esnan and that of a Machea or Caleb are permitted as it is stated they and not their offspring.
Okay.
Okay.
Baba Kama.
Okay, base. In what way is Shane considered muad? To eat what is fit for it. The animal muad to eat fruits and vegetables. If it ate garments or vegetables, he pays half the damages. In what regard were these words said? On the premise of the damagee, but in a public domain, he is exempt. If it benefited, he pays for what he benefited. How does he pay for what is benefited? If it ate from the middle of the street, he pays for what is benefited from the sides of the street. He pays for what is damaged from the entrance of the store, he pays for what is benefited from inside the store, and he pays for what is damaged. If a dog or a kid jumped off the top of a roof and broke vessels, its owner pays the full damages because they are mowed in. If a dog took a cake and went to a stack of grain, ate the cake and ignited the stack of grain for the cake, its owner pays the full damages for the stack of grain, and he pays half the damages.
Um,
That's it. Which is
no,
Tom, one more, which is Tom, and which is Muad. A Muad is anyone that has worn 3 days. A Tom when it refrains from going on 3 days, and these are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. But Meir says a Muad is one that has worn 3 days, 3 times. A Tom is one that the children touch and does not gore.
okay.
And last we have
Eruvin.
if there were two sons, if there were two, some of the cubits of one overlapping the cubits of the other, they may bring their food and eat in the middle, provided that one does not carry from his into his friends. If there were three and the middle one's area was overlapped by the other two, he's permitted with them, and they're permitted with him, but the outer two are forbidden with each other. Reb Shimon says, to what is this comparable? To three courtyards which open into one another and one which open into the public domain. If the two made an error with the middle one, it is permitted to them, and they are permitted to it, but the two outer ones are forbidden to one another. One who was traveling as darkness approached, and he knew of a tree or a fence, and said, my Sabbath dwelling is beneath it, yet it said nothing. If, however, he said, my Sabbath dwelling place is at this trunk, he may walk from the present location to the trunk 2,000 cubits, and from the trunk to his house 2,000 cubits. Thus he may go 4,000 cubits after dark. If he does not know and he is not conversing with the law, and he said, my Sabbath dwelling place is at my location, his location requires 2,000 cubits for him in every direction for a circle. These are the words of Rokanina, Menatiganos, but this how you say in a square, like a square board, so that he may gain the corners. Okay. Okay, good.
And that's it.
Okay, have a great day. Enjoy and
Have a wonderful day.
thank you. Thank you. Bye.